Hi everyone. I will be starting off with Craft Your Early Career. I'd like to introduce Vidhi. Vidhi, she is an award winning AI/ML innovation leader with a vision to build trustworthy AI solution. She carries over a decade of experience enabling data driven solutions spanned across wide spectrum of domains. Vidhi, would you to start off with the craft your career session, and I'll hand it over to you now.
Yeah, thanks Priyanka for the kind introduction. Hi everyone. Uh, I'm glad to discuss the topic today, which is craft your early career. This is one of the topic I wish I had received the guidance on in early years of my career. The title has as such two dimensions. One is craft and another is the early part of your career. So you must have seen the cases where people give a lot of anecdotes mentioning that two people started the career with the same skills but witnessed different career trajectories. Well, it is because maybe one person observed certain subtle nuances of how to prepare a resume, how to prepare for each company specifically, knowing their job description, how to appear confident in an interview. These are the subtle differences that can totally shape your career in multiple ways. So let's get started and see what are those things that we can learn coming from the experiences of others. I've collated them from some of the anecdotes which I think I should have received. If I've received the guidance in my career, it would have been a great accelerator. So let's get into the agenda. So we'll discuss four dimensions today. First is on preparing a perfect resume. Then, what is the expectation of a hiring manager when you appear for an interview? How to appear confident while you're giving your answers in an interview? And what are the certain tips that can help you lay down a strong foundation for your career that you can adopt in early stages? So that's the key part. If you want to learn from others' experiences and start early, that can accelerate your career journey. So, learning early is the key here. And within resume building, there are certain other key factors. One such is certain must-haves that are non-negotiable. These are must for you to take note of while you're preparing your resume. Then the second is the trade-off that typically we end up making, which is how much to add and what all to avoid. You want to make sure that you put it all out there for the interviewer or for the for the screening process, that they know enough about your skills to select your resume, versus it should not sound like you've put it too much, which acts as a noise for the screener. The next step is how to distinguish yourself among thousands of other resumes that are available. And the last one on the resume part would be on how to have an ATS friendly resume. I'll talk more about what is ATS and how it acts as a bottleneck to get your resume past a software and land into the safe hands of a human selection criteria. So let's get started with the must haves first. This is mandatory, and this is a groundwork that we all should take care of while we are building our resumes. First is mandatory font. You should not have fancy fonts. It should be very simple, but it should not be distracting the human or the software as well. For the software selection process as well, it should be as simple as possible, and the font size should be consistent. There should not be too much of distractions on your resume, and grammar check is again a very easy turn off for the screening process. You need to make sure that you have foolproof to your resume. There are a lot of tools like Grammarly, which you can check your grammar on, and then pass it through certain peer reviews as well. The third is structure, which generally is difficult for somebody who is starting out. So, taking a help of a resume template, something that you can easily observe in Google Docs, you have a certain templates laid out which says where you should put what information, and there are categories that help you put out your related skills and technologies that you have learned in those sections. Now, talking about structure, one thing that is often overlooked is that people don't really put much emphasis on chronology. what I have observed many a times is that there is a lot of information on the CV. And generally, people start with the first company first, that they write their initial years of experience to start with. However, the best practice is to start in a reverse chronological manner. And the reason for this is very simple. As you grow in your career, you might have had a lot of experience, but you might not be remembering all of it when an interviewer asks you for it. So, reverse chronology highlights the most recent experience that you have or the most recent organization that you're working with. So, it gives the interviewer an idea of what are your current skill sets that maybe are well aligned with what they are looking for. So, going in a reverse manner tells them the importance of what they can ask you questions on and what might be very fresh in your memory. So, laying down a structure is very important, that the interviewer doesn't really need to skim through a lot of information to get to know where to focus, on which particular technology or questions to focus and ask you questions on. The third one is simple, but it can still be powerful. Oftentimes, we see that the resume looks like a complex world of dictionary with lot of jargons in it. I know that people might be thinking that in the job description as well, we see people asking lot many skills. So it's okay to keep writing about lot many things that you think you know, and you keep putting it just to make sure that your resume gets selected. But this is the opposite side of it. A simple resume which tells about what you are really expert at, and this should be coming from you. You have an honest idea about which skills are you most comfortable with, which ones are you more fluent with, and are considering yourself as an expert in that area and domain. If you are giving a true analysis of where do you stand in terms of those skills, it helps the interviewer gauge your skills in those directions and see whether it's a match for the job that they are looking for. So simple is still reasonable to put out there rather than putting everything where it becomes difficult, where you are good at versus where you are reasonably good and you might need a lot of ramp up on. The fourth, which is critical, is only and only state facts. Do not lie on your resume. Stating facts helps you build a trust relationship, which is important and very formal one when you start with any engagement. Leave aside the interview process as well. So, in order to build the trust, just keep writing the facts and do not lie. The first thing is that because it's an interview, you might get questions on that, and if you're lying, you won't be able to answer on those. Short and crisp. Now, this is something, like I mentioned in the beginning as well, it's a trade off that you want to maintain. How much to write versus where to know how to draw the line, that I've put it enough, which conveys the skills that I carry and helps the interviewer assess whether I'm a right match for the job or not. So, I would say make it not more than one pager. Try to put as much as possible in the first draft, but keep removing the redundancies that you think are not necessary first, or they might be repeating themselves throughout the resume. So, if it is a lot of information sprinkled around in multiple pages of a resume, it becomes difficult for an interviewer to assess which is the actual work that you've done versus where you are repeating yourself, which again acts as a lot of noise when an interviewer screens through your resume, and it becomes difficult for them to focus on your strengths and weaknesses. So, one pager resume is a standard one. Try to condense as much information as possible in that one pager rather than fluffing around lot many information and extending the resumes to multiple pages. Multiple pages do not mean that you have all those skills that you're mentioning there. So it's better to keep it simple. Add versus avoid dilemma. This is extending on to what we were discussing in previous slides, how much to add versus eliminate. So why we are doing it, if you'll think it from the direction of the reasons, or thinking from the side of a recruiter, and wearing the lens that they are going through a lot of profiles in a day and they really don't know until they open that Word document or the slides or the PDF, whatever you've sent them, unless they open it and screen through every single line, they won't be able to assess you truly. So, we want to make it as easy for them as possible, and the onus lies on you. Remember, we are talking about crafting your career. So, it's your responsibility to make sure that you lay down the information in as easy manner as possible for a recruiter to fathom and take action on. So, you want to distinguish yourself from others? And if you have thousands of resumes in front of you, how would you pick one? Definitely first you want to do justice to the candidate, because A, they are well qualified for the job. But for the recruiter, it's equally important to get the right candidate for the business, for the firm they are hiring the candidates for. So in order to enable the right match, the recruiter want to know what is your X factor. So it lies on to you to make sure that you furnish the right information and prioritize that information in your resume first. What are the must haves? Must haves also include having a relevant email ID, maintain one professional email ID. That's, I can say, is the bare minimum, and more often housekeeping, that you really don't want to carry a email ID which you might have prepared when you created your account in your life for the very first time, because that time not most of us are aware of what are the formal ways to create one. So look for a formal professional email ID for somebody to contact you. The next thing is give links to your social accounts. LinkedIn, I think, is one of the best platforms which lays down the information, your achievements, what you've worked on, and what kind of conferences maybe you've spoken at. GitHub you can give, which shows that what kind of projects you've worked on. If you have learned a lot in the early stages of a career, maybe you learned on some niche skill during your early stages, and you have learned it enough that you now think you're ready to jump into the public forum and start writing about it. So that takes a lot of confidence, because learning for yourself and delivering is one, versus explaining it to someone else and putting your knowledge out in public is another skill at all. So if you're ready for that and you've started writing, then Medium profile is good, where you can list down all the blogs that you've written about. And another thing that I've seen over the last several years is a lot of students are participating in Kaggle competitions. Now, this is specifically coming from the IT side, or maybe I can say the coding perspective. But there are other platforms definitely where you can participate in the contest for the relevant field and showcase your knowledge. Now, one fundamental thing that I've spoken about the social presence that stands across all these accounts is that you're networking, you're putting your knowledge out there, just not to show off, but also to learn from the experts in the field. You are initiating a thread where people can come together, join, discuss the pros and cons of the work that you've done, or maybe even how to improve it further. And this is what you want to do, right? You want to learn and grow. And in the process, you are maintaining a network, which is very important. So these four that I've highlighted in green are must for you. But what I've seen, and that's the orange one, is you don't really want to list your achievements. So what I've seen is people speaking about there are a lot many content creators and there are a lot many people who are doing all these things in social media. But is it really necessary? I would suggest strongly that don't go on what others say. You need to do all these things to become better for yourself. And whenever somebody asks you, you don't just need to list down achievements that I've achieved A, B, or C in my life. You have to explain the impact. And this is the thread or connect which you want to build upon in your career, and that will take you to places. If you're working on a project, on a business project, real life industry project, you just don't want to say, hey, I've done my piece of work and it should be enough. It's never enough until it makes a mark, it makes a nudge in the business value. So you should be always able to explain the impact in terms of percentages. If I did a project, what percentage improvements it brought to the business, or some gains that you've achieved. Did it help reduce some cost factors for the business, or maybe improve the business margins? How many more customers you've been able to onboard? All these are the impacts, the end goal that your work has produced. So start listing down and explaining those impacts, rather than just saying that I know these algorithms or I know this technology stack. So that is something that will give a boost, and that will make you appear as more cognizant of having a lens that ties to the end goal. So,
Vidhi, I'd like to ask a question here.
yeah.
So, there's a dilemma that we often have if we take a career break. So, how do we address gap years in the resume and how do we manage them?
Yeah, so career gaps, in fact, I've also taken one. So, what I've seen over the years is that this is more acceptable now. It's not as questionable as it used to be when I was starting my career. Now, if you have a gap, Either you clearly call out, put a timeline. So when you're writing your work experience in chronology, definitely wherever you have a gap, it might break, your chronology might break, there would appear a gap. Either you highlight it yourself and say this was a career break, and if you're comfortable mentioning what was the reason, maybe for exploring something new, or maybe you started some work on your own, which was being a solopreneur, either give a one small liner, and during that break did you actually achieve something professionally. That in fact adds more credibility to the break. But if it is something personal, I would say then try to stay away from it. Don't write unless somebody asks you. I've seen people not crossing the line and asking questions when you say that it was for personal reason. So putting it there is still fine, and if somebody asks you in an interview, you can say that was on a personal reason that I've taken a break. And during that time, if you've learned a certain skill, which makes you even more relevant for the job that you're applying for, just start navigating the conversation in that direction.
Sure, thank you for that.
I hope that answered the question.
Yes, it did.
And do we need to take some more questions before I continue with the thread?
No, we can continue. There's one more actually that I had. That is, do we need to actually write a resume summary?
Okay. So resume summary is, there are two ways people look at resume summary. One is if you are able to write a cover letter, which effectively tells someone that before them opening your resume, what can they expect from your profile, that it gives a sense of your achievements and your I can say relevancy for the role, which oftentimes acts as an additional step, which is a bonus step that you do. Another way to put a resume summary is when you write at the top of your resume, when you're opening in the opening statement of it, that you can give brief three liners which explain something which is not evident in your maybe chronology of work experience, because work experience will specifically tie to the work that you've done during that tenure in that organization. But there are definitely people who are doing some work which is out there in the community, which they might not be thinking is relevant when they put across that organization experience. If you want to highlight those achievements which make you stand out from others, in terms of are you simply doing the work that you're asked to deliver, or you're taking a step ahead and making going over and above. So if you have those kind of qualifications, it definitely makes a mark writing those three liners or very small crisp summary and at the starting of your resume.
One more question, Vidhi. Is it required, or I think there's always a thought in our minds to include hobbies and interests in the resume?
Yes, that's excellent question actually, and it depends on. Sometimes I've seen it depends on the organization you're applying from. Maybe coming from geographies, I have seen certain organizations from a different geographies. They expect you to simply put down to the point what is relevant for your candidature in terms of the opening that they have put out for. Some are very open because they consider you as a well-rounded human being, not just a professional, and they entertain that. How I maneuver this situation is that I write those things about my hobbies or skills, which tell certain skills about my personality, which is directly or indirectly related to the profile. For example, I can say that I'm very disciplined, and if that leads to me picking up a certain sport, and that tells about the kind of dedication or maybe the kind of stress building, you are able to endure more stress if you're a sports person also. So even if you're putting it and in the interview process somebody ends up asking you, then you can take the conversation in that direction. Otherwise, it's, I would say, unless you are lacking some content which is directly coming from professional experience. If you have professional experience which is already capturing a lot of your space in the resume, do not write it. If you think that it is still relevant in indirect way on your profile, the kind of job that you're applying for, and do some bit of homework and I would say groundwork or research in the kind of organizations it is, right? That also takes me to the next point, that you need to prepare your resume customized to different organizations. So that point will get captured there. But to make it
Sure.
very short, I would say it depends. So it depends on the context, what you're trying to write and where you're floating your resume.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay. The last point, which I've highlighted in red, is that you need to avoid certain things. And this is purely coming from first that you need to keep your resume very crisp and to the point, where photograph is not needed, because people have access to your LinkedIn, where mostly people put up the photographs, so it's not explicitly needed in your profile. Your religious inclinations, date of birth, these are some unnecessary redundant information which do not really make an impact into how your candidature is getting evaluated. So that takes me back to the point where I would say foolproof your resume, foolproof your CV, and just try to remove those information which is not in line with what the hiring manager might be looking for, what the interviewer might be looking for. If it is not, then it is the kind of distraction and it's not really meaningful to carry it forward. So try avoid putting these information. But even if I've listed down all those to do's and what not to do's, I would say there is no single short way of or a recipe of success. You cannot lay down that this is the best way of making a resume. So it's always good to have your own masala, your spice, your flavor, to make sure that you know yourself well and you know what makes you stand out among others, because that's the only thing that you can add, which would be your distinguishing factor, which would be your X factor, and that can only come from you, which I might not be knowing of. But definitely, if you add that thing, the interviewer, first of all, in the resume selection stage, that will catch the attention. And in the interview stage as well, even if there are certain things which might not be a direct fit for the role, this particular context will pick the conversation and you can start explaining on what is your strength, because you are definitely going to put your strength out there in terms of your own flavor. So give a retrospect to yourself, what is your strength that you can play along in your corporate journey, and give it a shot. Tips to outshine. This is again coming from the distinguishing factor when I was mentioning. And your job here is to make the interviewer's life or the selection criteria as easy as possible. You just want to stand out among others. So what you need to do is you need to understand the right keywords and how to show your commitment with them. So if you're starting in the early stage of your career, you might not be having really great number of years of experience, but you still are coming from an experienced skill set. You have learned certain skill with which you are willing to apply for a role, right? So what commitment organizations these days are looking for is if you put certain skills in the form of problem solver, or I am able to quickly ramp up. So when you put these keywords, that sparks the conversation in terms of, hey, you've mentioned something like you're a quick ramp up. Can you give me an example of what did you exactly do and where your skills really come handy? Or if you picked up a project or you delivered something which required a skill set which you did not originally have, but you had the ability to learn it on and execute very fast. So if you are able to put those right keywords, that again distinguishes you from others. You might have already learned some languages. Again, this is coming from coding environment, but if you've learned some languages, some technology, and it extends beyond software field as well, then put it out there. If you've done internship, you might have learned a lot of skills while being there. And one caveat I would like to mention during this internship phase is that you don't just learn technical skills. You learned a lot of soft skills where you enter into a corporate environment and you learn and observe others, how they are behaving, what kind of projects are being assigned to you, why they are assigned to you, what is the end goal of it, right? The moment you understand the end-to-end life cycle, that is the lens you're carrying back and you want to put it in your CV. So write something about your internship, any mini project that you might have done in your college days. It might look very trivial to put it there, but because everybody else is thinking it's trivial, then you going out and putting it makes it as your distinguishing factor. Are there some research papers which you might have collaborated with your faculty members and you're either already working in it, or it might be a very small contribution that you might have made in a research paper? Anything that you might think is small might not be actually small in the eyes of the interviewer. So go put it out there. It has to be aligned with the role you are applying for. And in the early stages, because you don't really have number of years of experience to code, these things are definitely an distinguishing factor. Are there some certain publications which you have already made, some awards that you might have earned? some certifications from the external, maybe third party vendors that you have learned from, or the conferences that you've spoken about your work? Have you given certain competitive exams? It could be about CAT, IIT, CAT for IIT, or maybe GRE, GMAT. That score also tells about your aptitude skills and how quickly are you able to learn and work on. If you've participated in a lot of hackathons, then participation itself certain times stands out. It might not be that you've won a hackathon, but your ability to go out there, put yourself in an uncomfortable zone where you participated and learned something. So learning is the key criteria. Tell what you learned, even if you've not won an award there. If you keep on participating in coding contest, you have a very good rank that you can show off, then go out and show off. And if you've built a community, nothing like that. Over the last several years, I've seen building community, going out and talking about your work, learning from other works, basically creating a platform where everyone can come together, learn together, and grow together. This is a big yes. This is a big go ahead or a green signal for the interviewers to consider your profile. So do that if as much as you can. Don't think many people are already doing it. How would it make me any different? But think about rest of the 90% who are not doing it. You still want to stand out. The last that I want to say is go beyond curriculum. Most of the things that we learn in the early stages is all about I've learned certain concepts, I've learned the theoretical part of it. But the moment you enter into the industry, you have to go beyond just theory, just concepts, and start thinking from the application perspective. So you have to understand that whatever I've learned, there must be a way for me to connect the dots and be able to deliver the business value. So you need to do it for yourself. Don't think that I people might be thinking that I might be sounding again redundant. Lot of people are talking about their work, right? You need to do everything for yourself. It might not be adding value for others after a certain point, but when you learn something and put your work out there, it definitely adds value in your career journey. So whatever you're doing to make sure that you become a better version of yourself. That's another way to outshine, not comparing yourself with others, but with the previous version of yours. Should I take a pause for any questions or can I continue?
There is one question that Haripriya has asked:
Hmm.
how to approach cover letter when we're writing for a new position without any achievement in the field, which
Okay.
is different from the old one and trained via courses.
Okay, yeah, that's a tricky one actually. So first is that finding the intent of why we are applying for a field where we don't have an experience. So I assume it's coming from being a beginner in the field, or maybe I still want to gain experience and I have certain skills which I've learned along the way, which might not be from the application point of view, but theoretically I'm very sound and solid with the concepts. So start putting something that you still have in your profile, which is in some way or the other related to the position that you're applying for. So you can't really go blank and start expecting that you would continue receiving some bit of ramp up curve from the organization. Like you can't totally switch the domains, right? When you're starting out. So based on what, if you're coming from a computer background and you are still applying for a job which is related to computers, but may not be talking about the technology that you've learned directly, so give a base or a background of where you are coming from and then try to put it in cover letter. And this is the technical part where I would emphasize is that start putting the softness, right? What is the soft skills that you have which still make you an eligible for this role? So it could be like I mentioned, that you have a good quantitative skills, you have good aptitude, or maybe you're a good problem solver, you are a good communicator. To be very frank, in fact, a lot of things, I am coming from an AI background, a lot of things get lost in translation. People might be doing great models, but they are not able to communicate. Are you able to communicate? Start putting it out. Do you have a sense of ownership? Sense of ownership is something every hiring manager looks for. You really don't want somebody to come and then be dependent on you to train them, to look after their career and be responsible, because there are so many other people as well a manager might be responsible for. So what makes a manager's life easy and what makes you as a good candidate for a hire is when you say that I'm responsible for my career, I'm taking all those necessary steps that can take me to places. And how would you put it out there? That saying that if there is an opportunity, I'm accountable for the work, first of all, that I do and deliver, and I immediately take the ownership of my work, which means that I don't leave any scope for somebody else to come figure out and pinpoint the issues that I might have maybe put into the work, right? So that again tells about how strongly you are inclined in terms of building your career. These are some soft skills which might look very naive, that you might have still thought of in your life before but never thought of putting it out there. this is these are the skills that matter a lot. This makes the job of a hiring manager very easy when you know that the person is responsible for his or her own career and will come to them for the feedback at the right time, rather than them coming to you saying, giving you the feedback. So even if you put down these things, which might not be technically very aligned with the role, because you have an aptitude to learn, putting these skills still make you stand out. I hope I answered that question. Is there a follow up on this, Haripriya?
I think we are good. Vidhi will continue with the next slide.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the next one is ATS friendly resume, and I've been a victim of it, so it might sound like a good story to all of you. In the initial years, and maybe I think 4 to 5 years ago, I also applied for a role where I had to simply upload my resume to a software which says that there would be a screening, which would be done not by a human but by a software. And this is where my concerns started coming out. Oh, there should have been a human evaluator. How would a software get to know what my skills are and how it is directly relevant to the role I'm applying, right? And no questions asked, it happened that my resume was not selected. So if you want to build one ATS friendly, which is applicant tracking system, some software which basically does the job of taking your profile and it takes the job description. So you have two documents in a way, and it tries to see what is the similarity between the two. How relevant is your profile for the position the organization has opened for? So if there are many resumes, a lot of organizations choose such software to do the initial level of screening before your profile gets passed to a human for further evaluation. And if you really want to reach this second stage, you want to make sure that your profile is aptly meant for the way the software screens your candidature. The certain ways and certain best practices that I've learned along the way are: avoid putting information in tables, because there are a lot of parsers built into the algorithm. So you want to make sure that your information is easy to understand and parse. Avoid putting tables or any special characters or unnecessary images, because it might be considering just text, and might not have thought of putting emphasis on images, which otherwise also are not relevant for a resume. The next is to keep your font as simple as possible so that it's easy to understand, and the language should be also very easy. You should not try to put too many jargons which are not directly related with the profile. And the most important one is that your profile should be customized. So I'll keep putting emphasis on this word, customized. Your profile should be customized with respect to the job that you're applying for. Meaning, the job description, if you read it, there are a lot of keywords, and those keywords, if they're appearing many times in this description, which means that it's very critical, crucial, and important for the organization. They really want a person with this skill set for this particular role. If they are doing that, then it's an alert for you to know that these keywords are important for you to put in your profile. Obviously, if you have those skills, not that you will still go and put it just to make sure that it passes the software screening stage. So you have those keywords in your profile, and when you do that, so when you are trying to match a keyword in your which you put in your profile with respect to the job description, the chances of your selection goes higher. And if you have more overlapping keywords, the better it is for you to make sure that they are into your CV. Now, expectations of a hiring manager. Like I mentioned, crafting your.
Vidhi, I'll just, I'm really sorry. I just wanted to add one more question that Lisa has.
Mhm.
What are the current or trending keywords that recruiters look for in resumes or
Mhm.
cover letters or LinkedIn? You mentioned ramp up.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, a lot of it depends on the profile and the role we are coming from. But I think, yeah, go-getter or maybe the owner of solution, like solution architect, like I think, yeah, this is more for an experienced person. But a ramper, problem solver, good aptitude skills, and ownership of work, and maybe I would say revamping. If you did something, you don't say I just increase. If you revamp certain words, if you revamp certain thing in your career, or maybe build something from scratch. 0 to 1 is the keyword for experienced folks. Like if you started something which didn't exist before and you totally gave it a shape which is phenomenal, And so these are the words. Again, it depends on the industry or the domain you're coming from, and which stage of your career are you in, if it is like middle management or if it is coming from the purely from the software side in the initial years or so. But generally these are the words which distinguish you as well from the others and become easy for the reviewer to shortlist your profile.
Thanks for that, Vidhi. I hope that answers your question, Lisa. We'll move on to the next slide of expectations of the hiring manager. Then.
So, like I mentioned, craft your early career, the session that we are discussing, right? It's your career and you want to start as early as possible. And the reason for you to start taking notes of what makes you different from others is, and that too in early stage of your career, is to make sure that you experience non-linear and very accelerated career growth. And for that, everything is right there in front of you because you are the owner of it. You need to make sure that you lay down every single information in front of hiring manager so that their job becomes easy, and then in turn it becomes easy for you to also understand what a person who is sitting on the other side of the table is expecting from you or maybe from your profile. So how you would be able to achieve that? First and foremost is, and what I've also observed in a lot of candidates, is they really don't read the job description. The one single generic resume keeps getting floated across multiple jobs. And now you might be thinking that why would I be spending time on customizing my CV for every single job description? That's too much of a work. It's a pain, and if I'll keep doing this, when will I get time to prepare for it? But that single step of you doing something which is specifically an organization's ask, which if you put in your profile, that again distinguishes you from others who have not read the job description. This is at a resume selection stage, but this is just the starting point of it. It goes into the interview stage as well, which I'll explain later. But you need to know what they're asking for. First is because it shows your preparation, you've done the groundwork, it has your vested interest, you've spent time and interest in there, you're just not blankly applying jobs everywhere. And once you've done that, in this process, you understand what an organization is actually looking for, what is their expectation from the candidate, which takes me to the third point. And it, because you already know whether you possess the skill or not, it gives you a reality check, like where do I stand? Maybe if a lot of organizations are constantly asking for a skill which you might not really possess right now, but it tells you the trend towards which they are going. So you know what's the market ask, where should I upskill myself, right? So which is again an important thing for your career trajectory. You need to constantly keep yourself agile and learn new skills. So you need to find what is the overlap, what are they asking and what do I possess. If there is a gap, I need to work on it. If I already possess it, then that's hooray. You need to just go out there and start applying just by just highlighting it in your profile. So next is understanding of the project. So if a lot of organization, when they're putting out a job description, that clearly gives you a takeaway of what kind of projects you're working on, what are the key initiatives, that tells you a lot about organization. Now, you need to tell them that whenever you're talking about skills in your profile as well, you just don't need to talk about yourself. You need to just focus on making sure that they understand why you are the go-to person for the skills that they require. Start putting a focus on them, so that also kind of tells you about a marketing skill also, right? When you go to a person, you just want to keep a focus on that person. You're marketing your skills. It is as easy as that, and go and do that. Don't feel that if I already have it, why do I need to keep talking about it? Because unless you don't talk about the work that you know, or unless you don't know how to position yourself out there, you might be knowing the skills, you might be knowing the technical skills, but you might not be doing that extra edge, or the extra factor or extra mile that you need to go, which others might do and get the job that they want for. So you need to market your skills well, to make sure that they understand that you are the person they can rely on for their projects, for their business, for the analysis that they want, for the kind of vision they have for their organization, that makes you dependable. So the next one is, it helps you. So that's the key point. All of these things that you've done so far, what it gives you when you start appearing for the interview. Now we have made sure that we have done our homework while preparing the resume, while making sure that we float it in the right way. What we have done so far, if we have landed up a job interview, It helps us understand what an interviewer is going to be expecting from us, because I've done a lot of understanding of the project and the skills they're asking for. Start calibrating or start maneuvering the interview in that direction. And even if you put those words in front of an interviewer, they know that you've learned and read about the organization, which is a positive sign. It helps them gain the confidence that you're not just preparing one resume, not looking at the JD, just coming unprepared, which is a big turn off. So these are very simple and basic expectations of an hiring manager, but it's totally makes your profile stand out. Priyanka, is there anything I should take a pause for, or can I continue?
You can continue with him.
Okay, thank you. Now, you have landed yourself into an interview because you prepared well your resume, you've done your groundwork, you know about the company you're applying for, you know the kind of role they might be putting out there for your kind of candidature. Now, how to make sure that you don't miss that one chance that you've received, because you've done a lot of work for this. You need to speak with confidence. And how does that confidence come? Again, it comes with a lot of practice. And how would you keep doing practice? You don't really want to waste your chances by practicing in a live interview. I won't touch the part where mock interviews are there, but I'll try to touch the parts where you can go and ask for mentorship, which is invaluable. You can ask for guidance. I wish I had received this in my early years of career. But as soon as I understood the importance of it, I started going out, networking with the people who are the veterans and leaders into the industry of my field, and I kept openly asking them that, would you like to mentor me or so? This is the skill I have. This is what I've understood is a miss in my profile. I want to groom it further, and I think that you would be the right person who can mentor me on this. Be very clear with the ask and expectation. Don't simply say that I need your time. Would you give me or not? Or maybe just don't ask too generic questions. Identify something which you want your mentor to work on with you. Next is don't learn, and this is, I think, relevant outside the interview process as well. Don't learn by committing mistakes yourself every time. Learn from others' experiences. It will help you expedite whichever journey you are on. So learn from others' experiences. The only way you can learn from them is, why would anyone open their set of experience to you? You need to make sure that you are also equally vested in that engagement. If we mentoring is also 360-degree format. When you talk about what you've learned along your career journey, the experienced person will be able to share their anecdotes from career. So you need to learn and grow together. Reach out and network. And I can't really put more emphasis on this, but you need to speak out. You need to go out, talk to people. You initially, it might sound like you're giving a cold call to people, but you just need very few set of focused, grounded people who can help you. So I think it doesn't really matter how many people you are reaching out to. What matters is who are reverting to them, because if they are reverting, they are going to be a participant of your journey in a very serious manner. So again, onus lies on you. You need to keep reaching out to people unless you build yourself to that level where now you are in a paid forward position as well. For the role specifically, when we are talking about confidence, so far we've discussed about how you can take your network help understand from their experience. But for the particular role, if you are doing for that organization, check who are the people at that current position, or the people who might have worked in that organization previously, and they might have gone through the same process, right? Why do you need to understand everything from scratch? Just learn from their experience. Ask them that, I'm applying for this role, I'm appearing for this company, and I'm interested in this role. I see that you have done similar work, or you are at this position. Can you help me understand what all it takes? It's okay. This is not cheating. This is like understanding. Nobody is going to give you a same question which the interviewer will ask you, but they can share your experiences. And learning from others' experience is a wealth of knowledge. So go and ask that and prepare yourself. Once you know what is the process, you just keep iterating over it, practicing it at home, so that whenever you go out in an interview, you appear very well confident. The next one is career preparation websites. There are websites as well. I've seen a lot of questions people put on Glassdoor as well, and Geeks for Geeks, and there are other websites, plethora of websites in fact, that you search for, which prepare you for interview journey. What I on the other side believe is, when the questions are laid out right in front of you versus when somebody gives you a walkthrough of what they have been through, there's a little bit of difference. Again, it's a personal choice, but to be able to know what kind of questions you should be expecting, go through those websites, look for the questions. Don't depend on if somebody else is not giving time to you. It's still a democratized world. A lot of information is freely available and you can access it. And the important part, which I've left for the last one, is narrative. You need to have a solid opening pitch. If you can explain yourself well, if you are generally given very I think a few couple of minutes in the beginning, telling that, hey, tell me something about yourself, or tell me about a project where you worked and it created an impact, or something that you're very proud of. This is your time, own it. Give a very strong narrative of what you think about yourself, which should be very highly of the work that you've done. So practice this as much as possible at home, so that it becomes natural when you speak in an interview, and that can take the entire conversation in just your direction. So this is something which is often ignored, because we are constantly thinking about the technical work experience, the skills, maybe C++, any technical question that might be asked to us. But the opening is like anything that you begin well is going to definitely end well. So put more emphasis on this. I'll take a pause to see if any question. Okay, I'll continue. I think we are a little short of time, so I'll start. Okay, looking back tips. So these are certain tips which I have learned of my career, and when I look back, I think I wish I should have known them, and I still practice them a lot. So it's important for you to also know that your journey never ends, and you need to practice even if you are growing with experience. Very first is, like I mentioned before, also you have to have your own story. Everyone's story is different from other. You might have certain experiences in your career, in your learning journey so far, which others do not have. But you don't just need to list it out there. If somebody asks what kind of or maybe based on your conversation in an interview, somebody asks, hey, I think you're a very good communicator, you cannot say, yeah, I know, or something, and just close this. You can't have a short talk there. You can say, maybe you can give an example. Yeah, you know what, where my communication has helped an organization in delivering a work, and I was doing cross collaboration, there were multiple teams, and how I made sure that I'm the orchestrator, and this led to timely delivery. There was no lack of communication, it was very clearly laid out. You need to just give anecdotes. You can't just let other person assume out in the wild that you are good for a particular skill or a role. So this, I think, is very important. You think it might be a very small it might play a very small role in the interview process, but it does, because you need to take away that moment where you can shine, and do that whenever you have an opportunity. The next one is, don't just say, explain to, which again comes back from this, that don't just say I have this, or I do not have a particular skill, or in fact don't say anything negative about your maybe the skill that you lack. Just start talking about what you have, and would put more emphasis on that. Start polishing yourself in that direction. That's something people say, that this is how you take control of that 1 hour of interview process. So you need to explain in extent of what you know already, and then that can maybe tie back to where you can say that, okay, this I might not be having as of now, but I'm learning, and I'm doing this and this course to build that expertise. You need to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. I think people ask this question, and these are the tricky parts. You need to have a version of yourself. I know people keep asking, hey, what your version is, because everybody's skeptical of sharing their version. You need to know how to put your strengths out there. But for weaknesses, you can maybe start something which is a weakness, but then how you are either already making sure how to turn it into your strength, because you've already identified if you're talking out there. So this is a critical piece and a tricky one, so prepare for it, because in the initial years I know that this was asked to me as well, number of times. So you don't really need to come out unprepared for this particular question. One thing that we all miss is that we think interview is one-sided thing. People just are supposed to ask us questions because they are on the other side. And what these days a lot of organizations actually go out and ask the candidate is, it's a two-way interview. We are interviewing you, but you are also interviewing us, because you also want to see whether you want to work with us or not. So it's not just a one-sided phenomena. You need to be prepared to ask right and relevant questions in the end. You just don't say, hey, tell me something about your work, your career, why you are in this job, what makes you. No, just ask more relevant questions which tell them that you're focused still about the role that you're applying for. Something like, the role that we're talking about, if I'll start, what are the initial challenges, where my role exactly fits, and then something which is more meaningful, which does not look like somebody has asked you all of a sudden and you're running short of words to ask those relevant questions. Then the next is, focus on them, not on you, because you might be talking just too highly of yourself, but then it has to come out in terms of the skills that they need for the profile. So it's a soft way of maintaining a balance. You're talking about yourself in such a way that positions you as the right candidate for that role. Again, homework comes handy. You need to be a little more smart in positioning yourself, which should not look like it's about you. It should look to them about what they want. But again, how would you position it unless you talk about the skills that you already possess? So try maintain that delicate balance by practicing at home, and the interview will have a good impression of your candidature. This is something which nobody told me until a couple of years ago. So you can understand how far I was in this. Having a career journal, and I can't emphasize importance of this, is you need to have you need to have two versions of your profile. One is what is out there in the world for people to see and screen and interview and profile your candidature. The another version is which is hidden from the world, and you need to maintain it right from day one of your career. That's where this is important for everyone who is part of this session. In your early days of your career, you might think, hey, I'm learning too much too fast, and there is so many things that I can write, but I really don't have time to write it down. Why would I start maintaining some career log for myself? This is a logbook, something that you can say that last 3 months I learned this, these were the bottlenecks, these are the issues I faced, these were the areas I found myself I need to improve upon, how I improved, what was the help I sought. So certain kind of things, right? And you would be amazed with the kind of impact it creates in your career, maybe just starting in couple of years altogether. Leave aside that what impact it creates in 9 or 10 years down the line. So it helps you build a wealth of knowledge first, because memory is not really fresh. Because I'm 11 years, I don't even know how my career used to look like in initial 1 or 2 years, right? So your memory starts to fade off. You start to forget, you easily forget the projects that you did in the initial years of your career. Now somebody might still ask me certain questions on the initial projects, and it might not come very fresh in my memory. So but it comes to you if you are maintaining those logs, saying that these are the projects. And then because you have a very vast version of your profile, you can easily pick and choose when you're making your custom version, right? That, oh, I also learned this thing in my career, because I remember I built a dashboard, I built a web scraper, but I don't frequently write it on my profile because mostly my work is on the AI strategic side. But if I had maintained a version of it, I know if I'm applying for a role which says that just having more than AI algorithmic knowledge, if you have a knowledge of, have you built a dashboard before, or are you aware of how to scrape a website or something of that sort, then I would quickly pick that skill from my large journal book and then put it there, which helps me customize. So it's important for you to start maintaining it from day one. This is very, very important. Tips to lay a strong career foundation, because we are talking about early career. I'll share some of the anecdotes which I think would come handy to you as well. First is, again, you might have heard me saying it multiple times. I'll say it one more time. It's your responsibility. You need to own your career, which ultimately means that all the work that you go and deliver in the corporate world is your responsibility. You need to make sure that this is foolproof. You should not be dependent on someone else to QC and peer review your work and then find some issues and get back to you and iterate. You need to gain trust from day one. Somebody saying that, hey, this person has done work so exemplary that I don't need to in fact go and check it multiple times. I have that kind of understanding and I have the trust with that person. So you need to go and build it for yourself. That sets you up for success. Next is, keep seeking feedback. People might not come to you giving feedback all the time because they might be having a large team to handle. But it's your responsibility to go and ask feedback to whoever person you have worked, and that too in detail. And don't take feedback as negative. Feedbacks are not negative. Feedbacks are the right way to make your career journey positive. So keep seeking feedback from people, even from your peers. I till date go to my peers and ask for feedback after a project, after a conversation, maybe after a critical stakeholder meeting. I think you should do that too. The next one, which nobody will tell you, and you should know this from this conversation, is observe the leaders, observe the people around you, observe how they do the business, how they take the requirements, how they take actions, how do they prioritize, what do they communicate, what is the mode of communication they use. It's going to be inclusive. You'll get to see with the people you're working with. There is a lot that you can learn from leaders when they are actually not talking to you. They might be talking to someone else, but you can still learn and grow exponentially if you just observe them and put it inside your maybe skill set. Next is understanding the business requirement. You should not be doing anything just for the sake of it. Think and ask, what is the bigger picture, what I'm actually working for. And that would tell you a lot about, in turn, the work that you are going to do, that how it's going to make an impact. So when you have an end picture in mind, your quality of work will improve too. And the last one is that you should not at all take a compromise of working in silos. You should just go out, talk to others. Like I mentioned about business requirement, there might be other people in your team who are working on different angle of a project. Start asking them, hey, I'm doing something like this, do you have a particular say or a take on this, or maybe you think there is a better way I can still improve on my work. If you'll continue thinking that somebody gave me a work, I need to work and deliver it and just get done with it, you are working in silos. Later someone might come back and say that, hey, but this was not really expected, you should have done something different. Then you'll say, but I didn't know. But then whose responsibility was this? It was your responsibility in the first place, right? So it's important for you to go communicate, ask questions, get the understanding, get the requirements clear, and make sure that you never ever get to work in silos. The last one is, you need to know what it takes to go to the next level. And this is critical, because sometimes we think too highly of ourselves. We think that we already have all that it takes for maybe a promotion or for the kind of job that we are applying for, but we have a very narrow view if we think of ourselves. It's difficult to know what is out there in public, the skills that others might possess, right? So you don't know what is the starting point for you to improve. So how you can do that? What the one way is to understand from the requirements. If you're observing the leaders, the thing that I mentioned before, observe the people around you, observe the people who are maybe one step ahead of you, right? And then observe yourself as well, when you have come from maybe a previous version of yourself to where you stand today. So appreciate what you have learned along the way, but know where your trajectory, where do you want to see yourself. Kind of monitor those people, how they act in their day-to-day life, right? And then see whether you have it in right now. It might not be that you have it already, but that's okay, because not many of us have it. But do you at least take an extra step of identifying it, creating awareness among yourself, that I think A, B, C are missing in me, and this is how I chart out a plan for myself. I'll achieve this by maybe asking for help, networking, mentorship, guidance. Do what it takes to own your career, basically. The next one is to understand the difference between output and outcome. I think I can talk a lot more about this, but I'll keep it very short. Output is when you're just concerned about the work you are doing. Somebody will say, hey, I've given the output, no? But when you need to know the business requirement, you'll say, do I know what is the end goal and outcome that we are achieving? The next one is communication. Like I mentioned, you can't work in silos. You need to keep communicating anything that changes in your project work. Somebody assigned you some critical task, some requirements are changing. You need to communicate to everyone involved to make sure that nobody again has an opportunity to put a finger on you. Never assume your manager knows everything. Go and talk to your manager as much as possible. Take those 101s, kind of, I would say. That's the time, that's your lottery time with your manager. Just keep asking a lot of things that you want clarity on. Just keep your expectations clear with them, that this is where I see myself and I want your help in taking me to that level. Managers are meant to do that. They will be your ally in this journey. And the last thing is, don't just work for the sake of it. Don't say that somebody gave me a work and I just want to get my hands on it. Instead, make sure that because you know the end goal, you are taking ownership of your work, you are collaborating with people, you have the requirement clear. Make sure what you deliver is of high quality and value. As soon as you start doing it will take you to places like your trajectory will improve altogether. If you know that you are enjoying the work you are doing, you're understanding the work you're doing, you know the impact of it, you're not working in silos. This is very, very critical. But with this, I'll take a pause, because the kind of content I had to share, or the knowledge nuggets, as I say, that I've gathered from my career, I put a pause here, and I'll ask Priyanka if she has any questions for me.
I had a question for you. It's very easy to fall into the trap, and the trap of knowing everything and not reaching out. So how do we identify when do we require to reach out and make a connect and call out,
Mm.
basically? How do we identify that?
Correct. So, Priyanka, there is one thing that I mentioned generally to myself is I take an inventory stock of where I am today. Inventory stock means that do I know myself enough in terms of professional skills, and do
Mm.
I have a clarity of where I want to go. I know where. So basically, I am standing at a point A and I want to reach to a point B. It is as easy as that, right? And I want to know first of all what all does it take to be a person at point B. So that kind of gives me a stock of skills that I need to have, but I might be missing. And I need this can only come from self evaluation. I do that day in day
Sure.
out. So if
Sure.
you deliver and you're very honest and transparent with that, because in one or the other communications that you'll do with the stakeholders or maybe with the person of that position, you have to deliver that value unless you possess it today. So if you can calculate that difference and you know whom to reach out for it, you would be open to feedback, you would be open to network, you know when is the right time to ask whom, what kind of questions. Be very mindful of what questions you are going to ask to the person you are reaching out to help for.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. In the interest of time, and we've reached 2:30. So, if do we have any other questions? I don't see any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So with this, I'd like to conclude this wonderful, wonderful session with you. I'd like to thank you very much because I think all of the information and all of the knowledge that you've shared today, it it's it's very important for the people who are just starting out, and not only the people who are just starting out. Some of it really sat well with me too, because there have been experiences that I've come across that I felt really touched a note. So thank you so much for all of your realistic insights and advice that you've shared today. And with this, I'd like to conclude our our session today.
Yeah. Thanks, Priyanka, for inviting me, and I'm glad it resonated with you. I hope it did with the audience as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm very sure everybody who's attended this session will find each of the discussions each of the discussions, each of the slides that you took us through, each of the knowledge that you shared, very, very helpful, not just in early in their career where we need it the most, because there are a lot of times that we don't really, we need the help, but we don't say it out loud. But I'm very sure there are people who are, middle of their careers, and I think it'll equally help them. So thank you so much, Vidhi.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you.